You better watch out if your enemy's a road ahead of full prophecy to be the greatest beast the world has ever seen. I feed him every day like the bones clean. I feed him all the hate and he grows me. He gets caught real big, pissed off quick. And if you cross him, you might drop dead. Metaphorically, of course, settling the score. Never getting bored, that's the blood and gore. Always wanting more freedom from the source. They don't really listen until they feel the force of body. And if you start shit, you'll be heartless in the darkness. Torn apart quick, you let scars rip. You'll be chewed up and discarded. And this world ain't bright, won't accept it. Negative energy, I expect it. Once it's in your mind, it's infectious.
It's important to understand what the Department of Education does for you and your kids. Among the things it does is student lending, Pell Grants, something called IDEA, which is basically federal funding for families with children with disabilities, and Title I, which is funding used solely to ensure that all kids, regardless of income, can acquire a quality education. And they keep civil rights data on things like the levels of racial integration in schools. All of that is in danger. Trump's henchmen want to eliminate the Department of Education. They want to create block grants to funnel tax dollars to private and religious schools, to basically make white flight a taxpayer-funded benefit. They want to scale back enforcement of civil rights laws like Title IX, which prohibits gender-based discrimination. They want to enact a Parents' Bill of Rights modeled on Moms for Liberty, the book banning group. They want to take federal funding away from schools with curricula, books, or classes that address race, racism, gender, and sexuality. They want to eliminate school administrator positions that oversee DEI initiatives, resurrect the discredited 1776 Commission with the single goal of restoring, quote unquote, patriotic education in schools, North Korea style.
What's up? Actually, Liz popped off, so we got our guest on the show already.
I'm sorry, I thought
Liz
my
hopped
computer
up,
did
messed
something
everything
funky.
up. What's
Joy
going on,
Reid
everybody?
popped up.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. As you can see, Liz is here, so you know we are once again talking about the public education system in the United States and how it is under threat by Christian nationalists.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about what's currently happening in the United States and some states that could be something of concern to you, because if you have kids in public, these could be implemented nationwide very easily if and when Donald Trump gets inaugurated, which
the plan.
Find out more information on that tomorrow. To be continued. But anyway, so today we wanted to talk about once again some specific cases, like what's going on in certain states like Oklahoma and Colorado, which is where Rob is. Liz, welcome back to the show. It's good to see you again. I appreciate it. So this is going to be an educational episode for me, definitely, just because my new job's got me working a lot, so I haven't been able to focus on the show as much as I want to, but that's okay. So this show's all about, educating the population on what could be.
And us.
Yeah, and us on what could be coming. Very soon.
That's the problem. I mean, there's not we could talk about the public education, but obviously there's no media education going on. There's media diseducation, disinformation. So we're trying to be part of the solution by actually helping people learn what the heck is going on at every different level. That's why we have a special guest today, Liz. If you'd like to introduce Rob, because
I would love to.
And we have one today.
Absolutely. Well, this is Rob Rogers, and he is based in Colorado. And I followed his work for a couple of years now, actually. Makes terrific videos, presents so much information. I learned about the Seven Mountains Mandate and about I want to get the name right, the Apostolic Reformation movement through Rob's work. And as we move forward, I just think that we do need to go to our experts to inform us so that we know what we're talking about when we can then go out and share the same information. And Rob is near and dear to my heart. Like I said, I've been following his work for a while. He's a veteran, so of course that, piques my interest every time. He is a big advocate for the separation of church and state, which I think is amazing. He actually started a lot of this work in 2012 because of that rise of the do they call them the affirmation, the I can't say that word, Reformation churches. Rob can address all of that today. He's a businessman. He has actually now founded a consulting firm. So he's a wealth of knowledge in lots of different aspects, but in particular, this Christian white nationalist movement that we see across the nation. It is mostly white. It's not all white, but it is definitely, I'd say a majority. And unfortunately, the work that they're doing is happening in churches. And I mean, you talk about the ultimate in the misuse of institutions like that would be the misuse of the religious institution.
Captive audience, Liz. I mean, it might not be what it's intended for. We can have that discussion another day, but it is a captive audience.
Well, it absolutely is. And this is a whole nother subject, but while you're saying captive audience, Trump has just announced that he wants to get rid of the part where they can't go into church settings or religious settings to find people that are not documented. He wants to remove that safety aspect. So basically what he's saying, I grew up in the Catholic Church, and I know that the Catholic Church, would shelter some people, as a way of supporting community members. And so Mr. Trump, some like to say president, but I'll call him Mr. Trump.
Never.
Not here on this
he is really leaning towards a further separation of church and state. So I want to give Rob the floor there. And thank you so much, Rob, for joining us today, because it's such a very important topic.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's the New Apostolic Reformation. And it did not necessarily originate within the apostolic churches. It more of the evangelical or charismatic churches, or so think Southern Baptist, think Pentecostal, that kind of thing. It's you mentioned before, like where I got my start with tracking all of this, and it's a little related to I know we're going to be talking about Oklahoma some today. Right next door over in Arkansas, that's where I grew up. And in 2012, the state senator named Jason Rapert, he was elected with a whole lot of Coke money, and he was the one who introduced the heartbeat bill, which that was one of the first in the nation that was passed. That originated with Jason Rapert. He's the guy who set up the Ten Commandments monument on State House grounds in Little Rock. And I'm like, okay, this is a little theocratic. I might want to pay attention to what's going on.
A little bit of an agenda.
Yeah, a little bit. And I didn't know what I was looking at, but I started seeing him flying the Appeal to Heaven, the pine tree flag. But this was back in 2012, and I didn't know what that meant back then. And now I know.
A stolen flag, by the way.
I just found out last year what that meant, or 2 years ago what that meant. You know what I mean? So
we'll get into that.
Yeah. But thanks for having me. I've been very
this is great. I mean, Liz has always been introducing us to awesome people. So I mean, especially you're right up our alley. So
one of our hot button topics in this
right down to the beer.
I was going to mention that at the end of the show.
Hey, I feel like I saved too early or something. Right?
Liz, we'll have to send you a fake beard.
Now, since we've started this show, one of our focal points, if not our main focal point, has been the public education system, because that is what molds and gives knowledge to our future generations. You know what I mean? That's what molds our future leaders.
Yep.
And for decades now, because I'm the father of a kid with a disability. My daughter was born deaf, so I know what it's like in the current environment, trying to fight just to get basic services for your kid. I mean, they want to cut all funding for disability services, for crying out loud. You know what I mean? So if you have a kid with an IEP or even any kind of disability at all, they just want to just stop helping.
But that's so ironic that a group, right? We're talking about the church. And I think this goes central to this whole issue. We still in this country give the church, and I'll give that a broad definition, the benefit of the doubt that they are a benevolent society benefit that is just there to pick people up when they're down and is a refuge for when they are at their lowest point. And I wish I'll say it, disdain for religion comes from that hypocrisy, because I have grown up in the United States of America, and in my life, in my 43 years, I have never seen religion in America do anything but try and tell us how to live, try and take away rights. So if that's what it was intended for, that is certainly not what it's doing nowadays. Look, and I think that's the scariest part.
Christianity has been forced on society. Okay, let's be real. Christianity
colonizer
just for the most part, Christianity throughout world history was never chosen. Okay, it was like people would take over a land and be like, "You need to convert to this, or we're going to kill you." I mean, you're pagans or whatever. That's what they did.
Yep.
And this is kind of exactly the same thing without the violence. You're trying to force
Well-
feed our entire without the mass. Not yet anyway.
No,
But
you're
they're
right.
trying to force feed Christianity in our throats. And I'm not knocking Christianity because I was bad. My journey's weird. I got baptized at one point. Like I had problems. I was trying to find my way. And it actually led me to this point. Like I've come to I think Christians as a whole are a lot of them are very good people. They just need something to believe in, something that makes them feel better about their current existence.
bring up a
These
good
people
point.
these are religious, just like Al Qaeda. These people are religious extremists.
Yes.
They're no different, man.
Well, I think
drives
that's
me
the
crazy.
main goal. But to your point, I mean, we need to start looking at what the goal is. And I think that, in my mind, is where Rob's benefit is to this show, because you have experience in seeing religion being used at a local level to start taking over our culture. And by that, I mean our schools, our messaging, our entertainment, and that all links into, and I guess I might as well jump into it now, that links into what's going on that we need to talk about. So this is a little old. It's a little old, but it's important, especially because of the proximity to places Rob is going to speak about. So Oklahoma State, about a year, the beginning of the year, middle of the year, the superintendent announced that all schools must incorporate the Bible and the 10 Commandments into the curriculum, because we all know 8-year-olds definitely need to know that cheating on your spouse is a sin. It is
that'll
just
make
as
them
important as
smarter.
math and science.
That'll make
But
them
again,
smarter.
that goes against the idea of freedom of religion. People don't understand it because you're free from religion. You could be religious, but you cannot tell other people what to believe. So incorporating the 10 Commandments is a forced religious ideology in an educational setting. But that's not it. It goes deeper because we have to understand the motives. So here, Ron Filipowski, if you don't know him, you should follow him on all social media. He's a great guy, excellent information. Oklahoma School Chief Ryan Walters said the public school teachers are the ones responsible for domestic terrorism. Okay. He says teachers have turned classrooms into terrorist training camps by indoctrinating students to hate America. Now, we'll touch on that at the end of the episode about what that really is happening and to whom. But a great response to that was from Sunday Girl. The last time Oklahoma had a Democrat supervisor was in 2011 when it ranked 7th in education. Since then, they have all been Republicans. Oklahoma now ranks 49th. For those of you who don't know, we have 50 states. Canada will be our 51st state. We're on a
Yeah, that's a pattern.
If it's up to Trump, we'll have 51 because Canada apparently will be the.
So.
Well, and I want to I just want to clarify one point before we get really deep into the weeds here. This is not an anti-Christian approach that we're talking about. Like you said, Mike, we believe that people have the freedom to express and to practice their religion, right? Whatever that may be.
Absolutely.
What we object to is the extremism that is being used. Because I've been brought up and am a Christian. This is not the Christianity that I know and am familiar with. And so I don't want anyone coming away with, that podcast downed Christianity. We're not. No. We're downing extremism because that's the problem.
Right.
I think it's
covering
important.
it up as Christianity is what they're extremists. And they're using Christianity as like a cloak.
That's the thing that's the most terrifying is they're very clever. And Ron, I think Rob, you're going to be able to speak to this so much better. The extremism we're talking about doesn't necessarily look like extremism. But when you consider what they're doing, it is my belief that it is extreme to try and take over our school systems to eradicate any voice but that of Christian ideology. That is extreme, especially in a country found with a division of religion and state. Right. So, Rob, do you see this in your struggles and in your learning that there's almost how do you convince people of this extremism when they're not necessarily killing people in the streets yet? They're not blowing up things yet. But it is extreme, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, I think at any time that you're attempting to deconstruct and destroy a public institution, regardless of the methods that you're using, that's extreme. That is extremism. It doesn't have to appear as, a riot or, literal violence. The outcome is still the same, and that outcome is still extreme. I also just go back to that this has already gotten violent because Christian nationalists were responsible for January 6th.
Boom.
Period. One of the guys that we're going to talk about today, Lance Wallnow, just as an example, he and his assistant made maps of the rallies and protests that were going on January 6th. And they distributed it out. Those were actually mentioned in the January 6th transcript being used by Oath Keepers and Proud Boys. There's a direct connection. They helped to orchestrate it. So they're responsible for violence too.
So there is a smoking gun.
Oh, absolutely.
It seems like there's I think, and I want to get to this later, we're past the point of finding the smoking gun, because I think we're going to see in a couple of videos and some of this other material and from your testimonies too, we're not in the shadows anymore with this belief, with this movement. No. This attempt at Christian nationalism is the national narrative now. Mm-hmm. And if you look at every aspect of our culture wars, of our war against science, our war against education, our elections, everything is taken over and backed up by Christian nationalism. That's the modus operandi of the Republican Party at this point. Is that a stretch?
No, I mean, and it's been going on for a lot longer than people think. The founder of the Heritage Foundation, which they are the originators of Moms for Liberty, they are the architects of Project 2025. They were founded by a guy named Paul Weyrich. Paul Weyrich, I mean, it's on video back in 1980 at a evangelical rally that Reagan was at in 1980. He's talking with Bill Moyer, and he says that they're using the precinct strategy, using the churches as the central hub. This has been a deliberate, very, very deliberate approach since the early 1980s.
You know what? I've been saying the same thing. Like, the Heritage Foundation has been trying for 40 years to get their ass to the White House, and now they have J.D. Vance, a direct line to the presidency. We've been saying it on the show.
And Mike Johnson.
Yeah, Mike Johnson,
who is a Christian nationalist.
It's through and through. J.D. Vance, who is a sidestepped author of Project 2025 in the sense that he helped write the author's forward for his book. But I think for some reason what you just said there made me think of this, and I don't know why. We're seeing, in many ways, America has always been this great experiment in democracy and keeping religion out of the lives of everyone so that everyone can live their life how they want. But there was most of history, religion was backed by the ruling, either kings or governments directly. So is this, in a lot of ways, this is a result of the church not being mandated by a monarch they don't have that immediate power or that assumed power. So they've had to spend generations, if not a couple of hundred years, convincing people of the ills of non-religious society. And I think that's what we're seeing, because they can't just fall back and say religion is mandated. That's what they want to do, but they have to get power to get that control again. So now it's all this misrepresentation. It's this naming themselves benevolent little wonderful organizations with their actual insidious intent. I mean, here's a perfect example, and I think we should get into it because this is the bulk of today's show, and it's the most important to see where this belief system and where this structure is coming from for Christian nationalism. So I'm going to head right into it. The 7 Mountains Mandate, okay? And now what's interesting in this graphic, which is one of their official graphics, there's a lot going here. The 7 mountains are business, government, family, religion, media, education, and entertainment. Okay, great. What I find the most interesting is that they're talking about reclaiming the 7 mountains. So that almost plays into what I just said. They are trying to regain that level of absolute control over a society. And it says it right here. They quote scripture. I'm sure it's misquoted and out of context, but take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving you for your own. In other words, we could do whatever we want with it. So my opinion is that there's only 2 of these that have an absolute right. And I may be wrong, but I think family and religion are the only ones that belong in here. And maybe that's just my misunderstanding, but I don't know that religion should exist in all spheres. But Rob, I know you corrected me before the show, and I'd like to hear why.
Yeah, I mean, if you throw the graphic back up, it's, I mean, yes, it's terrifying to think about the religious extremists taking over these aspects of society, but I'm a supporter of the Constitution. And they have a constitutional right to influence entertainment and media and business. Even education, they have a constitutional right to set up their own private schools to teach their kids whatever it is that they want to. We all are protected. We all are protected by those constitutional rights. Now, the one that I have a significant issue with, of course, is government. Our Constitution also says that church and state are supposed to be separate. So that's where I would draw the line. But they are using the influence in all of those other spheres of influence to influence the one they really care about, which is government.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's also to make it a little bit more crazy. The Seven Mountains Mandate is actually based on a supposed prophecy that when Christians control those seven spheres of influence, then God's going to come back. They are trying.
Oh God, come on!
So they're not just waiting for the end of times;
Yes,
they are
like,
actively trying to bring it about.
What is that cult that waited for this? They all like the spaceship people. Like it's just like
Heaven's
the same
Gate.
thing.
Heaven's
Yeah,
Gate.
Heaven's Gate. It's like they're waiting for the
really
spaceship to come
scares
by
me
so they can take. Yeah, this is insane.
It goes in line with what they prioritize when it comes to the control that they want. They don't care about the environment because they don't believe the environment is necessary. Not just because they don't think it's going to be around forever and they think God's going to come back and all that, but because, just like that graphic said, they believe that the earth is as for us to do as we see fit with. Now, that goes against all understanding of reality and science, but we're talking about prophecy here. So,
yeah. All right.
But I'll go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. I was going to say I wanted to get into the whole Oklahoma thing.
What's really scary is that in 2022, on video, Lauren Boebert was speaking at one of these Christian nationalist conferences in Woodland Park, Colorado, and she said, "We are in the last days." She's speaking in her official capacity too, by the way, and she says that we are in the last of the last days.
Yep.
This is so exciting because you all get to play a part in ushering in the second coming of Jesus. I just quoted her.
Oh my God, people are so weird.
Jesus never left me. I don't know what's wrong with all these people.
Right. And I love how Lauren Boebert of all people is supposed to represent a good Christian. Come on, man.
I want to touch on a couple things. Rob mentioned the Constitution, and yes, I believe in following the letter of the law of the Constitution. I think that's what makes us a strong nation.
Right.
Yes.
And I think when you're looking at that same graphic, we need to talk about public education as opposed to just simply the topic of education.
Concept. Yep.
And so I don't believe that they do have a constitutional right to impact public education with religious information. So let's draw that division first of all, because I agree. I think they have every right to have, Christian schools or
they're so tax-free.
schools.
Make your own schools with that money.
Well, and that's the thing. So if we're talking about public institutions, that's a little bit, I think, more against this whole mandate that they claim to have.
Well,
media is not really a public thing, right? It's run by companies. The entertainment industry, they have a right to make whatever movies they want. There's actually a whole manufacturing company or movie manufacturing company out there that makes some of the most ridiculous movies, but they have a right to do that.
Right.
And that's what we're really focused on, I think, as a movement and across the nation. And I think there's a whole heck of a lot of people that agree with us that it's not about limiting someone else's rights to do as they choose and see fit. And even if it's follow this mandate that they've been given by this prophecy, right? They have a right to do so, but they don't have a right to do it to you and I.
And I think
or use our taxpayer funding to do it.
Yes,
exactly.
Well, that's the key.
Exactly.
I mean, when you look at what they're trying to do, they are not searching for, quote, equality. They are not searching for equity. They are searching for control.
And
what
supremacy.
And what a secular government does, and this is the misunderstanding of the word secular. Secular, yes, means without religion, but it doesn't mean to the exclusion of religion. Religion can be incorporated, but it is one of many available beliefs and opinions you are allowed to have. And if you don't maintain a secular government, a secular public education, and you allow one group, any group at all, to come in, they will influence, because that is the way groups and people and ideologies work. You have to maintain that structure so that you have a base generic education that benefits all. If you want to supplement that with your personal beliefs, go right ahead. But I don't have to believe and have kids learn things that you believe that are not part of a fundamental education, but they can't agree on that. They don't want to believe in education. They don't want you being taught science because it breaks up their narrative. But more importantly, it's important to understand right before we go into, and I want Rob to talk more about the things he's seen in Colorado on the ground and why this is not just something we have to look for, but something that's actually happening. We have to stop it now. This is not a fringe belief in the sense that it's a small fraction that just everyone laughs at. It is a growing belief. So right now, here's a little poll. 7 Mountain Mandate Agreement is growing among the more politically engaged. So note, this is a poll to Christians only. Here is the question. Some people don't pay much attention to politics. How about you? How much attention do you pay to the news about national politics on TV, radio, printed, or the internet? March 2023, you can see where that line was in black. January 2024, that is right now. This is a recent poll. That is a big increase statistically when you start looking at numbers, voting, the fact that our last election was, quote, lost by a few 100,000 votes, basically. We're talking about a true influential segment of the population that is growing. And a lot of that has to do with marginalization of certain groups to steal them away from the progressive concepts. But Rob, what have you seen on the ground that leads you to believe this is not just a movement, this is a growing coalition?
I am a little biased because I do live in Colorado Springs, the evangelical Vatican, spiritual NORAD, area.
Spiritual NORAD.
Spiritual
That's
NORAD
my
is good.
favorite one.
Good.
It's the 4th largest faith-based economy in the United States. So I'm surrounded by it. Focus on the Family is right down the street from me. Focus on the Family is part of all of this as well. If you go back and refer to that 7 mountains graphic, Family is one of the mountains.
Yep.
Focus on the Family. They told us they didn't even hide it. They were part of all of this. James Dobson was part of creating all this. Point being, I'm a little biased, but the leaders in these Christian nationalist movements, they leverage Colorado as a hub, and they call Colorado a test case.
Yep.
There are a lot of things that people around the country may not have heard of because they happened here first. But there's a lot of things that do get experimented with here. As an example, and related directly to public education, some of you may have heard about the American Birthright Social Study Standards. It's a whitewashed Christian nationalist Judeo-Christian version of American history.
Oh my God!
And that was developed.
Thank you so much, Jeanette.
Thank you so much.
That was one of the members of the advisory board of Project 225. They wrote these American Birthright Standards. They have only been implemented as a standard in one place in the United States so far, and it's in Woodland Park, Colorado, which is about 20-30 minutes away from me. It's an experiment. They tried it out. They lost 40% of their teachers in Woodland Park School District whenever that happened too.
Which is what they want.
Which is what they want. It also directly supported a big charter school, that was in Woodland Park too, whenever all this happened. So there's an example. They're using this as a test case here.
Wow.
The universal school choice that Colorado's had in place since 1996, the attempts at voucher programs, which have been defeated so far, the same type of a voucher program that Arizona has implemented was tried in Colorado in 2015. And so there's these things where we get used as an experiment. They figure out how to.
I'm glad you said that word because they understand the concept of the experiment. They understand the scientific method, but they don't want to acknowledge it.
Now, another thing that I find that people that's flying under the radar is they essentially want to turn schools, because this is talked about now in Oklahoma. I don't know if you've heard of any of this in Colorado, but they basically want to make schools military recruitment centers, forcing kids to take the ASVAB, the military entrance exam, while in high school. I made a video last week, about how Oklahoma, their idea, now this is not law, but the fact that they're talking about this to me is fucking nuts. Excuse my language. Sorry, Liz. It always happens. But they said you either, you could go to a university or a trade school or the military if if you want to get your high school diploma, you
And
have
you know
to
what's
have one of
scary?
those.
You know
That
what my
to me
favorite
is
part of that is?
nuts.
My favorite part of that is how blatantly obvious what their attempt is. And I will explain it because I guess that's our job here. They don't want people to go to the colleges because that would create woke people, you know, people that have brains that function. They might
Yeah.
want you to go to a trade school because, hell, everyone needs plumbers. What they really want is to defund all the brown schools so that all those brown people have no choice but to go to the military.
This is all about segregation. Again, the end game is going to be segregation. I know it in my bones.
And it won't just be it won't be segregation like we saw in the United States. It will be segregation like we saw in Nazi Germany, since they learned from what we did in the United States. What I mean by that is it won't just be brown people, but it will be plenty of white people that consider themselves atheists, allies of the LGBTQ community, any trans people, anyone. So what we're going to see is a true Christian sect running this country, and they're already trying to do it.
Rob, have you heard this? Donald Trump apparently is now talking about reparations for white people.
For what?
I don't know.
Well, we've been
for
treated
racial
poorly for so long.
discrimination.
For suffering through a period of Democrat, progressive, lib, DEI programs.
We truly live in the dumbest timeline in human history right now. But no, this is definitely serious. But I want to talk about.
I mean, that's bold.
That is bold. Well, his racism
about,
has always been bold because he doesn't know any better.
Oh my God. The connections between the Seven Mountain Mandate and Project 2025, because probably me and Mike, again, since we started this show, even before the show, I've been obsessed with Project 2025 ever since.
You introduced it to me.
I know. He's like, why are you so obsessed with this? I'm like, I don't know. But honestly, I'm glad I was, because it's basically the status quo for Republicans right now. Their goal, their end game is horrifying for the public school system. Essentially, it won't exist anymore as we know it.
And they say it.
Right. And I don't think people understand that how big of getting rid of I don't know why people are cheering about getting rid of the Department of Education, because the Department of Education doesn't even handle curriculum, right, Liz? The curriculum is a state thing.
Correct.
All right. So Department of Education handles equality, diversity, making sure all kids are included, making sure kids have services that they need if they're disabled or whatever. You know what I mean? That's what they're about. So to me, it's horrifying that we may not have a public education system. And if we do, it will be, like Rob said earlier, like a rewritten history. They're trying to do this in Germany, the AfD group, or the new Nazi party, essentially. They're trying to say that they want to teach that, the Holocaust wasn't so bad. Yep. The people in the camps learned skills. It's like Florida. They learned skills that helped them later in life. It's like,
that's Elon's group, right?
Yeah, that's
Elon supports
Elon's
that
one. I'd like to point out that there are actual books being published by PragerU, which is a depraved Christian nationalist education outlet that produces grooming material. I don't think I exaggerated on anything I said. Liz would call me out, trust me. Okay, where it talks about Frederick Douglass being like, slavery wasn't that bad. We learned skills. It's great for the black people. Like that's being used. Like they took that, and this one's for Addison, are very likely putting that into Florida public schools because of Ron DeSantis being like, I'm as shitty as the best. Look at me, I'm shitty. So
well, we have a representative here. I can't remember what seat he holds, but Donaldson, whose wife is part of the charter school movement, but that's just an aside. But he has said that it was much better for black families during Jim Crow.
Yep.
And we're in 2025.
Oh my God.
Robinson said it, but so did Donald. I think his name is Donalds or Donaldson here in Florida.
So I want to get into some videos, but I do want to cover just a little more material. And the reason I do is because Rob provided these videos to us, and they are, again, they portray an extremism that doesn't look like the extremism we've come to understand the word to use. But I want you to see how ingrained this concept of the Seven Mountains Mandate, this concept of the dominion over the planet, basically by one group of religious people, is already spreading to our politics, to our government. Okay? Jeremy mentioned Project 2025. Well, doesn't this look a little bit like the concept of pillars and the concept of breaking down society's fundamental things? We have dismantling the foundations of immigration. We understand they want to make it a very specific demographic in this country. Undermining the transition to clean energy. They don't care about clean energy because they don't think the planet matters. Eliminating racial justice initiatives. Well, we know that's something they want to do. Gutting public education. That's their number one goal. Slashing healthcare insurance. Now, Liz, you had mentioned this needs to be a little more accurate. We would love to get rid of insurance because that would mean everyone has healthcare. So what this is really meaning is they want to slash the availability and access to health care insurance.
Correct.
Shutting down access to reproductive health care. We know that you control who breeds and when, and women don't get a say. Deleting sexual and gender identity. I mean, look, they're trying to control every aspect of our lives. We don't tell you what not to believe or what is real or isn't, or who is valid or who is not, but they love doing it. And it gets worse because it's not just a political Bible that is being used to staff the Trump agency. This is what it's really about. And now Rob mentioned earlier an appeal to heaven. This is what I've been calling the cute little pine tree flag, which used to symbolize, basically, if I'm right, Rob, I'm sure you could correct me, something to do with George Washington's regiment in the civil or in the Revolutionary War.
Yeah, it was a symbol and a flag that was used during the Revolutionary War. Yeah.
Okay. So now in the 2020s, the flag was flown at events attended by various far-right groups. 2020, including a Christian nationalist strand of Donald Trump's Stop the Steal movement. So again, Stop the Steal. We have the Proud Boys. We have everyone working together. But what this is a symbol of is the new Apostolic Reformation, something that Rob and Liz opened the show with. It's a Christian movement that combines Pentecostalism, evangelicalism, and the Seven Mountain Mandate. It's a controversial movement that advocates for spiritual warfare to bring about Christian dominion over society, and weaken the separation of church and state. There it is. Well, what are the goals? NAR leaders want to restore apostles and prophets to the church, whatever the hell that means, and change the way church is done. They believe the NAR will have a greater effect than the Protestant Reformation of the 16th century. For those of you who aren't religious history nerds, I'm going to ask Rob to explain a little bit about what that claim is. The beliefs are that NAR members believe in spiritual warfare, which they describe as taking place on three levels: ground level, occult level, and strategic or cosmic. As George Carlin would say, spooky language. But who else is involved in this? And then I'm going to ask Rob to explain what that all means. The Supreme Court is compromised. Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito in May 2024. I think some of you might remember this. We covered it. It was actually something that was talked about a little bit on mainstream media. News outlets reported that this flag, the happy little pine tree flag, was flown at the vacation home of Supreme Court Justice Sam Alito in 2023. This drew media attention because of the flag's use by Stop the Steal supporters. The justice stated that his wife, gotta blame the wife, had displayed the flag, referred to the historic background of the symbol, and refused to recuse himself of ongoing cases involving the 2020 presidential election.
Oh, I wish we had the picture because Mike Johnson, that flag is being flown in the Capitol building as we speak.
Correct.
Mike
So, Rob,
Johnson has that flag outside of his office.
What does all this mumbo jumbo mean? What is a reformation? What is this concept of a new wave of a belief system within the church?
So if you go, you got to go back to Martin Luther's time in Germany with the first Reformation. The key thing,
predestination.
Predestination. You don't have to have an intermediary to get your sins forgiven. It was starting to reject some of the core principles of Catholicism. Back in the day, that's what started Protestantism. Access to Bibles. The printing press was part of all of the Reformation as well, just making Scripture more available to the common person. That was what the Reformation was back then. Now with the new Apostolic Reformation, that idea is that because whenever Paul was spreading the gospel to the Gentiles, he set up a structure for churches because he couldn't be in like all of these places like where he was going. He had to set up a structure for this. And there was that, I don't know if you've heard the fivefold ministry where you have apostles, teachers, prophets. That is what the center of the new Apostolic Reformation is setting up the church the way that it was in Paul's time.
Great.
In
Go back in time.
Prophets and healers are part of like all of this too. Lance Wallnau, he's the face of all of this. He is a prophet. Mario Morello, who's another one of the faces of this, he is the faith healer. He's the healer part of like all of us. So they really do mean this. They're trying to set that structure up. But the ultimate goal is not to spread, not to spread the truth of Jesus's teachings. It's for power and control.
Yep.
It's to solidify the power and control that they have over the government in the U.S. Not just the U.S., but this is also an international.
Oh
movement.
yeah.
We're seeing that now. We're seeing that now. Elon Musk, as a matter of fact, is now meddling in European politics.
Yes, he told
not just
England that they should dissolve parliament.
So in Germany, he's supporting the Nazi party. I'm sorry, the AfD. And now he is coming like this guy. He's like the evil. He wants to be like world domination. Is that the end?
Yeah, but yet again, see,
What
the
is
beauty
going on,
is
man?
the beauty of this is the absolute steadfastness of this Christian nationalist movement. And maybe we got to start not saying nationalist, but like Christian globalist movement, because that is what this is. Elon Musk is just another tool, and he's beautiful at it because he has all the money in the world and he's dumber than a shoe. Okay, and he's very enthusiastic about
Right.
having a lot of best friends. So you're going to start seeing a ton of groups. Don't forget, Elon Musk wrote a recent article for the AfD in Germany, the Nazi party.
Mhm.
You don't just submit one and go, hey, could you please publish it?
Yeah.
They were okay with publishing it. So they're now letting him in because they want to use his influence and power, Starlink, to start helping their movement spread. So you're seeing a globalist over Christianization of our politics that isn't a message of helping everyone, because no one's stopping genocide in the name of Jesus. They're trying to stop gay people from existing and change our education in the name of Jesus.
But see, that's the thing, like, Rob, if you probably would agree, like, if Jesus came back right now and started healing the sick and feeding the hungry, they would call him a socialist and probably be the ones to crucify him again. You know what I mean? Am I
it's
right?
funny you say that. Rob, I know you're going to know about this because you have your pulse to the creepy underground of this movement. Aren't maybe a lot, I don't know the number, churches and some congregations starting to openly preach that Jesus was too woke, that you shouldn't forgive your neighbor, that you shouldn't be kind? Like, I'm starting to see this MAGA hyper masculine, aggressive, militant, anti-woke bullshit taking over what formerly was a message of coming together. And now people are rejecting Jesus in church in the name of Trumpism.
Yeah, they're actually starting to go back and use some of the elitist language that led to the original Reformation, because it's just that people don't understand. They don't understand the context within which Jesus said this stuff, or that was a different time. There was also like a wartime Jesus too, where he said that he didn't come to bring peace, but a sword. So you're starting to see a more of an emphasis on our society is just too woke and soft to really understand what Jesus was trying to say. It's easy to take his words out of context and apply them incorrectly. Yeah, that is starting to spread throughout these networks.
That what you just described sounds like a march towards a crusade. If the world is too soft to understand the kind, loving message of Jesus, we'll beat the crap out of it and cut their throats in his name.
Yep.
But and to be fair, that's where this is headed. I mean, you don't start trying to destroy education if you're not going to supplant belief systems in that void. And what religious extremist groups all across the world have been doing forever is you make a small segment of a population, usually the most easily influential young white guys, and you turn them into extremists and little messengers for Christ, if you will, or whatever religion. And I'm going to ask, how linked is the Quiverful movement to the Seven Mountains Mandate? Is it like produce lots of little soldiers for Christ so we can be ready for the coming war? Because they've been trying to produce little soldiers for a very long time.
I've actually never made a connection. I've looked for this. I mean, I've done a lot of digging, right, and I have not made a direct connection.
So maybe they're in line.
They're direct. They're in line, but the Mormon Church, is in line with all of this too.
They don't need to be like this. They are like that.
Well, that's just like in the context of public education.
Oh,
There are it's the billionaires and the people that want to privatize public education so students can be profit generators just happen to be in line with the indoctrination goals of Christian nationalists.
Yep.
So even though they don't have necessarily the same beliefs or moving toward the same direction, but I haven't made a direct connection between Quiverful and Christian nationalism.
Rob, let me ask you about. I want to talk about because we have a couple videos. Explain to everybody the prophet. You say he's a prophet. Who is Lance Wallnau, and what the hell is he doing?
So Lance Wallnau is the guy that brought the Seven Mountain Mandate to prominence because 7M actually originated back. It started in the 40s with a Canadian religious cult movement called Latter Rain, and then a guy named Peter Wagner kind of took that and also the founder for Campus Crusade for Christ and the founder for the.
I remember that when I was in school. I remember seeing them around.
They kind of came up with this. Well, Lance Wallnau, being the salesman that he is, in 2013 he wrote a book with a guy named Bill Johnson, who's the pastor of Bethel Church in California, and they wrote a book called Invading Babylon: The Seven Mountain Mandate. And it was still kind of like fringe. People weren't really paying a lot of attention to it until Lance wrote his book, God's Chaos Candidate, which was released 6 weeks before Donald Trump was elected the first time. And it kind of predicted Trump's his election. And then when Lance wrote that election prediction all the way to the bank, and it sold a lot of copies. And so now he's become kind of a face of the movement. And he is everywhere. I always say that I can't criticize the guy's work ethic because he can't keep up with him. He is everywhere.
Well, he's on a higher mission, right?
Say it again.
He's on a higher mission. He is driven.
All the tent revivals that have been happening, that even politicians, the Courage tour that happened this past summer, that's Lance Wallnau, Mario Morello. Before that, it was the Fire and Glory tour, which that came through Colorado Springs, and I actually attended that, for a few nights, and it was terrifying. But that's who Lance Wallnau is. He is the primary promoter of the Seven Mountains Mandate and this intrusion into government.
All right, let me play the first video of him, just so everybody can get an idea of who we're talking about here.
I just want everyone to pay attention to the confidence, the nonchalance of it, and just how deeply and clearly this man is saying what he's saying. It's chilling.
It is. Ready? Here we go.
So phase 1 is the house. Phase 2 is the walls and the gates of education. We got to get on the school boards. We did it in South Lake, Texas right now. 1,000 people went in and flooded, took over the school board, took over the city council, took over the mayor's office. Boom. You know who it was? Christians did it. The media doesn't know it because we never said it was a church initiative. We called it a community initiative.
So he there is talking about their
There's a book about
practices. Yeah.
There's a book about that town in Texas. Actually, it's quite good.
Liz, stop telling me about books. But if you want to send me the title of that book,
yeah, it's a short read.
The title of that book.
The NBC News podcast, South Lake, too, does a really good job.
Yeah.
And
man, I mean,
but yeah, he.
Let's
you're right though. He is a true salesman. Like you could tell that.
Well, I was
he
just
to me
say,
sounds like a true believer to me. He doesn't sound like somebody that just is pitching something though.
I asked Rob that before the show
because I think that what you mentioned is work ethic. Like somebody that there's a difference. You can tell a difference between true believers sometimes and people that are just peddling and grifting. Like this guy to me seems like you said he's writing this prediction all the way to the bank.
You make an excellent point, Jeremy, because Trump is known as the most lazy human on the planet, and he's a garbage grifter, but that's what he is. This guy is probably doing what he's doing because he wakes up every morning, looks at himself in the mirror, and goes, "You are chosen by God to do this." I have no doubt in that. The more you look at him, the more you listen to this.
Well, like Mike Johnson at one point claimed he was Moses. I don't know if you ever saw that video, Rob, where he's talking. And
Liz, do you want to respond to this in the chat?
Other than the Pine Tree people, I forget the name of them already. The NAR, like CPAC. There's all kinds of other different groups that are infusing religion into the government. And for some reason, I don't know where these people are getting. They keep saying, "Oh, the founding fathers wanted us to be a Christian nation."
Let me tell you something.
If they wanted us to be a Christian nation, they would have put it in the Constitution.
There is nothing drier. There is nothing drier on this planet than reading the Federalist Papers. But there is nothing more important on this planet, at least as far as in the United States, than reading the Federalist Papers. They tell you what the government was intended to be. They tell you what the Constitution was. They tell you what they didn't want in the government and what they did want in the government. So yet again, when you control education and people don't know what the hell our own history is, when they could just go around and say, this is what the founding fathers wanted. Well, if you don't know that these things even exist, you're not going to go look for it for yourself and realize how much bullshit they're feeding us.
The letter that I recommend the most, that I wish that people would read from that time, is James Madison's Memorials and Remonstrance Against Religious Assessments. He spells it out there flatly, makes the argument better than I even could about why the church needed to be separated from government. And he even takes it a step further and says, there's sects of Christianity. So who decides which sect is correct?
And well, they've been fighting ever since.
Right.
They can't even agree on that.
Letter, it's Memorials and Remonstrance Against Religious Assessments. James Madison's letter is really good.
You make a great point. What people don't understand, and I am a big federalist. I really agree in what, obviously there were major problems with the worldview of the founding fathers, and we could talk about that all day. But if you look at the Constitution and what its intent was and what they tell you the intent was, it's important to realize they were almost all very religious men. Many of them were Christian, and they were writing to tell you that you cannot include religion in government. In fact, one of the reasons they separated it was something that I kind of said earlier in the show. The church maintained, the king, right? The monarchy maintained its power because it was anointed by the Church of England. They were in bed to keep control over the population. So when they founded this country, they went, gee, what allowed the king to stay in power? Everyone believing that God wanted him to be in power.
Right.
They literally formed it to not have that problem.
I think Benjamin Franklin was a deist. I'm a deist, so I
a lot of them were strict deists. A lot of them were Christian. James Madison was a Christian. All right,
there was.
Well, whenever we characterize them as Christian, we also have to remember too. This is before. This is before the concept of evangelicalism came about. Yes. Before concepts of predestinations, before a lot of the things that we accept as, for granted now, wasn't the same kind of Christianity.
Well, that's the other thing. People, especially religious people in a position that they're trying to influence the country, want you to think that religion, their religion, has always been, is always been, will always been. All you got to do is ask anyone who believes in Zeus, and you'll know that that's not true. Okay? So any type of religion that you're going to put in place will change over time unless you are going to put the thumb down on progress and individuality and free thought so hard that you stop progress. And honestly, they don't just want to return to the old horrible ways. They want to stop progress because progress will ruin the hold that religion has over government. Progress is not going to stop you from believing whatever you want to believe, but progress will make it harder to force religion on people because the more people that realize that you are free to practice your own religion in a secular society.
Goes back to what Lance Wallnow was saying, is they specifically want to target education. They want to indoctrinate the kids.
Education is everything, right?
Right.
If we don't have education, we have nothing. Someone in the comments said, no education, you get Trump. Liz, you've spent your whole life in education. Right. What happens generally to those students that do not take to the education the best? And I don't mean people that are stupid. I mean people that even have abilities and have the ability for critical thinking and can be functional. Without an education, what happens?
That's me.
Well, and I'm a realist, right? So I am a strong proponent for the public school system. I am also probably the public school system's biggest critic.
I love Addison. She corrects me all the time.
I've worked for, reform within the educational system all of my career as well. And unfortunately, what happens is that kids turn off from school, and it happens pretty early. Yep. And it's because we don't necessarily approach learning in the way that we should. We approach learning still in the old school farm, setup.
Memorize this, learn
Memorize,
this, recite this.
See, that's
Mhm.
I'm actually exactly what Mike just described. Like, I barely passed high school, even though
Mhm.
obviously I have critical thinking skills. Obviously, I'm not an idiot. Well, that's
Yeah,
debatable.
well,
But, you know what I mean. But I'm able to. But like,
our education system is not designed to build a functioning society. It
it's
used
not,
to have
man.
more of
There's
that.
been a break, and I think it's our generation, like late Gen X, early
Oh, yeah.
millennial. There was a breakdown somewhere in education and like the comment said before, like stupid people. That's why we have Trump. Like a society that's not educated votes for Trump.
Well, here's a perfect example. No. This is perfect, Rob. Rob, I want to ask you, in your experiences in Colorado and other states, and your experience in researching all of this, in the area, I'm going to ask this question. I know the answer, but I want to hear it. In the areas where education has been decimated and overrun by hyper bureaucracy and over religiosity and religion taking a firm hand in it, how do those people end up voting? And how are their states doing? How are their social issues, meaning not gay people, but food and jobs? How does that tend to play out for them?
Is Rob frozen?
Oh,
I
think
didn't.
Rob.
I didn't.
Oh,
I
there
didn't
he
hear
goes.
sorry, you're kind of breaking up a little bit. I didn't hear
Oh,
the
okay.
question,
So,
like,
like,
Yeah, we
completely,
cut off for a
but,
second.
What do you
I
see in
think you can just
places?
look at
Yeah, there you go. You got it.
Go ahead.
Do you want me to repeat the question, I guess?
Is he breaking up? I don't know.
Uh-oh.
He can't hear us.
Can you hear us, Rob?
yeah. Am I back now? No, I think I got enough of it. I think you can just look at a map,
Mhm.
and just do an overlay of voting patterns by political party, along with education rankings, and I think it paints a pretty clear picture. In spite of the fact that Colorado has been a test case for so many of these anti-public education efforts, the Front Range, the Denver area, the Denver metro area, does keep Colorado kind of like overall, more on the left-leaning blue kind of like areas. But if you look through places in the South, you look in places like Oklahoma, you look in places like Arkansas, into Mississippi, and Alabama, those kind of like places. In those places, especially in those places where they've implemented voucher systems where tax dollars can be used for private religious education, you do start seeing, as the education level goes down, you do start seeing certain types of political voting patterns start to emerge.
So what you're saying
and that's
is,
not my opinion. There's data that backs that up.
Well, I think that's what separates us from them, and I'm being vague when I say it that way, is we rely on facts, data, and interpret that not to our own whim, but we come to the conclusion that the data says, and the data is undeniable. The more religious our states have gotten, our school boards, and by religious, I mean Christian nationalists, not just anything, we have seen more and more people turning towards Republican voting, towards anything. One of my favorite names of one of my Instagram followers, Old Immigrant, said, "Stupid people elected Trump and will never believe he can do anything wrong or illegal. The deplorables." And that's a perfect example, because you had the religious right turn Trump into almost a messianic figure. And now these voters cannot distinguish between their religious beliefs, their political beliefs, and what's good for them. They don't have that ability anymore, because when you see your religion talk about how infidelity is a sin, lying is a sin, theft is a sin, racism, negotiable. But when you do all of that and then you back Donald Trump over and over again, and you back Republicans like Matt Gaetz and all of these people over and over again, you kind of start realizing, I guess, on your own, that those are just kind of words, and what really matters is party, Trump. Oh, all hail Trump. How do they distinguish anymore?
And I think why they've been so successful with doing this too is because, and someone mentioned this earlier in the show, that there's a captive audience. The left, the Democrats, the liberals, we don't have a place where we have a captive audience 3 times a week that's just going to listen to and accept everything that we say, regardless of how ridiculous it is.
It's almost like there's a law that says you're not allowed to promote politics in churches because that's why they're tax exempt. That's weird. It's almost like the country was kind of set up to protect against that. That's the whole point of this.
And
We're just saying, let the country
we need
run
to
itself.
use that in our pushback, because that is, according to how the founders and everyone else along the path of America has stood firm, that there is to be a separation. So if they want to take down the walls of that separation, then it's just going to be seen as a business.
Yep.
And businesses pay taxes.
Right.
And so that is a huge point in our favor.
I want to let Rob
but
talk
you know
a
what I
little
mean.
bit about what he has, because we're about to close out the show here. And what I've noticed is, like, you see these Republicans, Rob, you probably attest to this, you see these Republicans complaining about how Christianity is becoming less and less popular. So their solution for it is, you're going to do it. Or else.
Right.
You know what I mean? We're going to make it popular.
You'll like it, or we'll make you like it.
Exactly. So, Rob, what do you guys, what do you have going on in the... Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say their solution is Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA.
Right.
Well, wait a minute.
Oh, God, I forgot about him.
And I think that's a good point, because, like you said, they have a captive audience these several times a week. Well, and Liz, I think we're going to talk about some upcoming shows at the very end. One of them is that captive audience is shifting away from just churchgoers to very specific demographics,
Right.
white young men. And I think in some ways, and this is why they want to ban TikTok and other types of internet engagement, is because we can create a way bigger audience of choice, where it's not captive in the sense that you can't get away because we've shamed you into sitting here, but we need to build a coalition of outlets of education and community and safe spaces. And I know the right hates that term because they don't understand what it means. We can create those, quote, captive audiences willingly. And I think that will inevitably be more powerful, because if you choose to seek out and if you choose to participate instead of having no choice, that bond in your head will inevitably be stronger. That's what I think.
Geez,
So,
Mike,
Rob,
you've given our mission statement pretty much from Stop
Did I
Moms for
really?
Liberty, right?
Right.
It's,
So, Rob,
it's
what do you
really
have going
network
on?
of thought.
What do you have going on in the upcoming future? Also, where can people find you if they'd like to get to know you better as far as social media and whatnot?
Oh my God, hold on.
All my,
Thank you
social
so
media
much.
Thank
sites,
you so much.
Um,
Sorry about that.
all of my social media sites, it's all the same thing. And this was kind of a happy accident. Whenever I was running for office, I was going to be slick, and I named all of my social media platforms Elect Rob Rogers, all one word. But I didn't realize until after the fact that it looks like Electro Brogers. So I have a superhero character called Electro Brogers. But anyway, you're not going to forget it now because now that's all you're going to see. But Elect Rob Rogers, all one word, and all the different platforms. My company, my business partner and I, we do have a candidate and campaign team training seminar. It's coming up on the 11th of January. And this is our first attempt at basically starting to revolutionize what it means to run for office, because a lot of the techniques and strategies that are used specifically within Democrats, they originated in the JFK campaign in the 60s. And we haven't really made a lot of changes. And this stuff doesn't work very well anymore. So we're going to start to change that.
Wow,
The
that
other
goes
thing-
in line with the youth and the progress and the next generation, Gen Z and all that.
Who answers their door and who answers their phone anymore, right? But
Yeah.
our entire voter outreach is all centered around knocking on doors and making phone calls. So it's that's one thing we've got going on. But the
Rob,
other thing,
send me the information on that so I can push that training as well.
You
That
know what I
sounds
was
great.
just thinking there? It's sounding like we already have two sister organizations trying to reshape how we fundamentally disseminate factual information. And now we have people like Rob, and I'm sure there's others, fundamentally changing the way we see elections and getting like-minded, progressive-minded, decent humans into politics.
yeah, I mean, giving them the tools that they need to win. The right, and especially the Christian right, they have entire infrastructures. They have entire systems. The Heritage Foundation and Moms for Liberty cooperate. There's another organization called the Leadership Institute that's part of all of that specifically trains school board members to run for office. We don't have
said,
like that.
Yeah, we have always said, I've always felt anyway, and you just kind of confirmed it, that Moms for Liberty is just the arm of Project 2025 they designated to target children.
Yeah, the role, Moms for Liberty's role was to divide the electorate by scaring parents. That was their job.
I made this one for Liz because it's one of her favorite humans that she can't get enough of seeing there. So Moms for Liberty co-founder Tina Deskovich, which sounds like a curse word at this point after all we know about her, posted an Appeal to Heaven flag back in 2015. The flag with the slogan on it is associated with the New Apostolic Church, Reformation, Apostle Dutch Sheets, whatever the heck that is, who said it came to him in a dream. And what is one of their signature slogans? Your parental rights do not stop at the classroom. And if you look at a shirt, we do not co-parent with the government. You're right. What you do is you participate in a government through democratic means so that we have a robust education that benefits everyone to become better functioning citizens. That's what we do. That's what this is all about.
Yeah.
So Rob,
So true.
The other thing, if I can mention this too, that's going
anything
on,
you want.
It will impact everybody across
We have a
the
question
country.
from one of our favorite humans on the planet.
It won't be online. It is going to be in person in Colorado only.
Okay.
A lot of that is just because we can't control security as well as we need to, like online. Eventually, we probably will be doing it online.
What we got to do is do a Kickstarter to get, or we got to raise money to send Addison to that training.
Okay. It could impact people across the country. Here in my local school district in Colorado Springs, we do have it's a school board member that's on my local school board who actually is an instructor at Charis Bible College, which is a Christian nationalist Bible college in Woodland Park. He is suing a parent for defamation currently because he decided that he was going to read graphic pieces from a book that he wanted banned publicly. That's for the origin story, but a sitting elected school board member is now suing a parent for defamation. I am trying to raise money for legal defense fund, and I can provide you guys with a link to that if that's something you were willing to promote and share around.
You can put that in the show notes.
Yeah, and I can add it in our network as well, Rob.
Did want to bring attention to that one. It's one of the most expensive retainers I've ever seen because of the specialization required for this particular case. And I would love some help, and she would appreciate it too.
And I will also suggest that is a test case as well with how much they can get away with, right?
Yeah.
So they'll try this suit in Colorado and then use that as precedent.
After the show, send me all the details in our group message, and I'll put it in our show notes as well as promote it on my social media as well.
Awesome.
Whatever we can do to help. We're small, but we're ambitious, and we're willing to help as much as we possibly can.
Yep.
Rob, unfortunately, we have to close out. I'd love to have you on again, for sure. Thank you so much for coming on and letting us know, because like we said, education is one of probably the hot button for us.
And I'm really interested in that.
It is so important.
Campaign stuff. Very interested to see how we could form a new political mindset on what it means to serve and how to get elected. I think that's revolutionary.
Let me add a few real fast final thoughts here.
Please, yes.
We'll be working on another show coming up about the topic that Mike was kind of briefly touching on earlier, the influence and impact that has been made across the nation toward getting young or youthful males, particularly on college campuses, on the side of what we're fighting against. And that has been a very structured effort. And I think that would be a really good show rolling out as well. And the other show that we're working on, I have a couple of gentlemen who are trying to clear their schedule, both of which had lost positions within education. One was a principal, I believe, of a high school, and he was pretty much fired, no exaggeration, because he is a black male. And then the other was the principal of, I want to say it was a K-8 school, two totally different parts of the country, but he was targeted because he's gay. And so these are the real impacts of what we've been fighting against. So we want to, share their stories and get that out there.
That episode is going to make me so mad. Oh.
I know. Yeah, it makes me mad
me
to
too.
hear their stories.
Honestly, it makes me sick to watch this country because my dad fought. I do everything that I do for my father, for his memory, because my father fought in 2 wars. He was a vet. Also, Rob, he was in the Army for 22 years, fought in Vietnam and Desert Storm, fought for other people's freedoms. He would be I'm honestly glad he's
not
not
the best.
alive today to see this shit, man. Because he loved this country. He was the type that thought if you work hard, you get benefits in life. He really believed in the American dream, and just to watch it turn into this shit, it makes me sick. It makes me
And
truly
you
sick.
guys know I always want to at least provide some hope as we close.
Yes.
Out, right?
Yes, please.
Yes, Liz,
So-
you have helped us come down.
What we've
from the
talked
insanity.
about is so much of the negativity that has gone on, and these things that are happening just seem insurmountable, but they're not, because in my lifetime there's never been quite a push against public education like there is now. So this is it, folks. This is the best they've got that they're throwing at us.
Yep.
And what we're seeing left and right is that a lot of this is, as Rob referenced, unconstitutional. And if we just stand to the rule of law, and if we stand together, then they're not going to win. They can win these little skirmishes and, throw the 10 commandments up on the wall all they want.
Yeah.
But a true takeover is not going to happen, because even in this climate, right, where we think, oh, they've taken over America and, oh my God, they voted in Trump. Trump was not given a mandate. I don't care what anybody says.
No, he was
He
not.
just had a large following that we do need to address, but that is not a mandate. There were almost as many millions and millions of Americans who believe in a different way than all of this that we've talked about today.
I think it is important to remember, and this is a bit of positivity. I never end on positivity. It is part of our little internal conspiracy theory that Democrats won almost unanimously down ballot everywhere in every country, in every state, even swing states.
Yeah.
Moms for Liberty candidates have been getting their heinies kicked for a couple of years now. Just like abortion protections have been winning, LGBTQ. There is hope.
They've actually done a lot of winning in the state of Florida. Equality Florida has been very successful here. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, it seems like, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world, but it's not, because luckily we are in a country where we do have safeguards in place, and we just need to be smart enough and educated enough about those safeguards that we do come together and say, oh, wait a minute. So I think that's where we're at right now. It is definitely the weirdest of times, as just saying.
And Rob, I also think we definitely need to target people that are not political. Because they have no idea what's coming. Like we know what's coming.
We typically, the problem is that we're communicating in the wrong places and in the wrong ways.
Yes.
The vast majority of people are forming their opinions on things like what you're doing. You guys are playing a very, very important role in changing what actually happens, because this is where people form opinions.
Right.
Non-political people are not getting their information from mainstream media. They're not reading newspapers. They're not watching the news.
True. Very
That's
true.
data.
They
are
getting
suffering.
Yeah, they are.
And so we have to do more of this.
Yeah, it's the real people that have to fight back. And guess what? We're the real people. When they ask who's going to do something, it's going to be us. Every one of us.
So Rob, thank you so much for coming on. Also, next week we have, if anybody's on social media that follows us, you probably know who USMC Angry Vet is. I think he's got like 500,000 followers on TikTok.
Oh, wow.
He's coming on the show next week, and we're going to be talking about some veteran stuff as well as other topics that are going on. I love his videos, man. They were absolutely great.
It's
His
funny, the
lives
past
are
couple of
insane,
days,
too.
I've been seeing some interesting stuff that's going to feed right into that episode. Let's just say the number of, how about this? The highest factor in...
Mike cut off now. I think my internet's taking a shit on my end.
Talk about leaving us hanging. Find out what Mike was going to say in the next episode.
I have to move to an area with better internet service.
He's just a pro.
It's okay. The show's over anyway. We're good. Thank you everybody for watching. If you could like and subscribe. We're just gonna let Mike there like he's a picture. And thank you so much for watching.
Thank you guys,
Love
and
you
thank
all.
you so much, Rob. We'll be in touch shortly.
Thanks.
Please, yes, and send me all that information in our group chat, and I'll get that out too. So we love you all. If you would like to donate to our show, because Mike and I are trying to build an actual studio, you can do so. That GoFundMe link is in the description of the video. And maybe I can eventually get better internet service out here. I don't know, but anyway, have a good rest of your day. We'll see you again next week, and Mike and I will be trying to put out some additional content. We have a recording session on Tuesday, so we're going to try and make some extra content for later this week, but we're waiting to see what happens tomorrow, because I think tomorrow's going to be bonkers. That's the certification of the election. I think some shit's going to go down, but we'll have to wait and see. So we love you all. Thank you for the support. And like always, we'll talk to you soon.